Hi everybody, and welcome to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. In this video, I've got a post for you from the subreddit Relationship Advice with context and an update, and then a fantastic and beautiful malicious complaints that I'm sure you guys are gonna enjoy. Now, if at any moment you want to just navigate through the different parts of the video, you can just use the timestamps right below it. Now, let's get started with the first story. This post is from the subreddit Relationship Advice, and it's by user ThrowAwayWifeFamily. My wife's 30 female family still don't believe my assault after all these years and still think I, 30 male, cheated on her. This happened almost 4 years ago. It still seems to be an issue for them, even though the people who were responsible for what happened are behind bars. My 30 male assault resulted in a pregnancy. I got sole custody of my son after he was born. My wife and I raise him together. He is so precious. My wife absolutely loves him to pieces and he's my whole world. Honestly, he was the best thing to come out of what happened. Her family gave me a lot of crap during this time. They were so sure I made it all up and this was just to cover that the woman who assaulted me was the mistress. Makes me sick thinking about it. My wife cut them out since they wouldn't listen. Only judged me for something I had no control over. Making me feel like crap for ruining their daughter's life having her raise my affair child. My wife's father died from COVID last year. After that, her family wanted contact again because they realized how short life is. They apologized to both of us and expressed interest in meeting our son. After all this time, I was grateful they came around. I know she didn't like to admit it, but my wife missed her family. They were great to us before this. Only, I'm finding out now that they don't actually accept me. Her sister approached me recently and said they are only making amends because they don't want to miss out on more of my wife's life, even if that means having to tolerate an effing a-hole like me. Her exact words. So I shouldn't think this means they're okay with me now. Her sister said they will always hate me for what I did to my wife and to not expect anything from them. That made me hit an all-time low. I was depressed for the rest of the day. They still think I'm a cheater, will only tolerate me and my son for my wife's sake. My wife doesn't know about any of this. I'm not sure if I should tell her. We've spent so many years no contact with them because they didn't believe what happened to me. But now she has her family back after losing her dad. I don't know if it would be right to take that away. What should I do? Well, Obi, first of all, I'm sorry that your wife's family sucks. But in this case, it's simple. You tell her everything. You are her family, she is your family. Your wife, your son, and you are the nucleus. Everything and everyone else comes after that. It's great that she has her family back, but that family is lying to her about tolerating you or about loving you, which is something that I'm sure is very important to her. You shouldn't keep secrets from your spouse, especially big ones like this. You need to tell her. I'm sure she'll understand and she'll be in your corner, and if this means cutting her family out again, well then that's what has to happen. They are toxic and they shouldn't be in your life unless they truly have your back and believe you. But I wouldn't hold my breath on that last part. Anyways, what do you guys think? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they had to say. Varnished Truth says, you have to tell your wife. She deserves to know the whole truth. And whether she decides to keep them in their life or not, you and your son should never have any relationship with them again. Don't do that to yourself, and for sure don't do that to an innocent child. Licht the Lost says, you tell your wife. She loves you and she loves her family, but she has already made it clear she can and will choose you and your son. My guess is she won't be happy at all that they are treating you like this and hold both of you and the kiddo in pure contempt and hate. You need to trust your wife, just like she trusted you when you told her of you being assaulted. Now's your time to show her you trust her to process the information and make her own choice. Her family is disgusting and horrid. I can see why they wouldn't believe you, as not a lot of men are victims of assault by women, but it can and does happen. Tell your wife. Trust her." And OP responds, "I trust her completely. What makes me really hesitant to tell her is because I know she wouldn't think twice cutting them out again. And I feel awful after everything that happened, she'd go through the heartbreak of cutting off her family again. Her dad died with them still not speaking to each other. It's hard not to feel like it'll be my fault this happens, but with the rest of her family." Xaniv says, "She cut them out of your life because they didn't believe you. She's already established she's willing to make and enforce boundaries. Now they are back, but they still don't believe you. The difference this time is that she believes they believe you. By not telling her, you are lying to her by omission. The truth here is going to come out. Either the sister loops your wife in or her parents let it slip. That day is coming, and when it occurs, your wife is going to be livid with you for withholding her right to enforce a set boundary she decided to implement. You have to tell her." Well, the community is definitely in agreement that OP has to tell his wife about what's going on. There's no question about it. Now, you know that when I get the chance, I dig into the comment section to see if I can get a little bit more context or information regarding any story. And in this case, I was able to get a little bit of it. So let's move on to some context and then we'll continue with the update. It was my wife's choice, and more importantly, their behavior that caused this. I know, but it was still very hard not to feel responsible for them going no contact. They were always very close before this happened. My wife's been so amazing in every way possible. She was always in my corner at every step and has been the most wonderful, loving mother to our son. She's seen the physical proof of it. Doubt is something I've never worried about, and it was never an issue of her believing me or not. She saw what happened and never once treated our son any different because of it. I am eternally grateful for the support and love she's given us. I feel that's why I wanted her to still have her family, at least after everything she's done for me, everything she's sacrificed. We had a talk last night, and I'm glad to have followed everyone's advice here. My wife's rightfully pissed off, but I told her to please take some time before she talks to them, so whatever she does or says is with a clear mind and not from a place of anger. There are already enough complications regarding my and my son's history. He doesn't need people he doesn't know treating him in any negative way or tolerating him. Now, I would like her to have some level of contact with them if she chooses to. Just nothing that involves me or our son. And to those asking, I'm not going to give you details about my experience. Her family had the physical facts presented to them before, when this was all going on. They decided it still didn't happen. I'm not here to prove what happened to me. A jury made that decision years ago. And that is as much information as I could get for you guys. So, we know that OP did have a conversation with his wife, and he asked her to please make any kind of decision once she's cooled down a bit. So how about we move on with the update and see what happened after this? In the end, I told my wife the truth about what her sister told me the night I made this post. Many of you had a point, and I couldn't keep something important like this from her. She's my rock. I love her with all my heart, and I am and will always be beyond grateful for all the support she's given me. I just wished I could give her this, having her family in her life, after everything she's done and sacrificed for me. It's sad that that couldn't be the case. My wife was extremely pissed off. She was ready to take names, but I asked her to please give it some time, cool off before she talks to any of them. Some of you pointed this out, and I told her the same thing, that we don't know if it's just her sister who feels this way or the whole family. So, last Friday, she talked to them. She got confirmation that unfortunately it wasn't just her sister. The entire family still doesn't believe that I was assaulted and that my son was a result of that. All the same talk her sister made about tolerating me and my son for the sake of being in my wife's life again. My wife was so angry when she got home. They told her to accept they're always going to hold my infidelity against me and will never understand why she believes this narrative, but they are willing to let those feelings aside to have a relationship with her again. My wife told me she decided she's not going to see them again, even with the compromise I mentioned, and was said in previous comments about her still having some form of contact with them, just not me and my son. She doesn't want that, and said she's done trying with them. We spent the night hugging and crying. Just because she was angry doesn't mean she also wasn't hurt about making this decision. We were down for days and then decided to take some days off from work. It was a spontaneous trip idea. We rented a hotel room a couple of hours away and stayed there for about 3 days with our son. We just hit the beach most days, went out to eat and stuff. Our son had the time of his life, and you know what? It was worth it. We definitely needed that time. Just got back last night, and I'll be honest, we both feel very recharged. It was a wonderful time that came from a crappy situation. I love my son and have loved him with all my heart since the first time I got to hold him. Before that, it was only just about not wanting him to end up in the system, but we both fell in love with him. Believe me, there were still a lot of complicated feelings I had about him, but my therapy helped me tremendously. Now he's the light of our lives. My wife is very overprotective when it comes to him, and he's definitely a mama's boy. Huge smiley face. I'm a lucky guy, that's for sure. I don't know what I did to deserve these two beautiful angels in my life, but I'll never take them for granted, ever. I'm hoping soon we can move on from this hurt. She's open to trying out therapy for a bit. It helped me tremendously before and after my son was born, so I hope it helps her too. Thank you for the lovely support and the push I needed to be honest with my wife. Well, OP, generally I would think that not having your family in your life is a sad thing. But in this case, it's the best thing that can happen for your wife to just cut off all of those toxic people that try to interfere in her family. Like you say, you are one lucky guy for having both your son and this amazing woman in your life. So it's great that you're never gonna take them for granted. All the best to the three of you, OP, and take care. And on that note, we move on to the next story. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Node of Ranvier. Refused database access and told to submit tickets, so I submit tickets. Okay, I have been meaning to type this up for a while. This happened at my last job back in 2018. To give some background, I was working as a data analyst at a company in the edtech sector. For one of my projects, I created a report that we could give to the sales team that they could then use when asking clients to renew their contract. Clients were typically school systems or individual schools. The report was all graphs, even adults like pretty pictures, and it showed the client's data on how teachers and students were using the product. Then our sales guys could say, hey, X% of your students and teachers are using this X times a week. So you should sign a new contract with us. I developed this report for our biggest client and had the top people in sales all put in input when developing it. The big client renewed, which was great. They loved the report and wanted to use it for all renewals, and we had 5,000 plus clients. I had automated the process and everything seemed peachy until I hit a problem. The data for the report was pulled from our database, MS SQL if you're curious. Now, I was in the research department and I did not have access to the database. Instead, our IT team had access to the database. If I wanted data, I had to put in a ticket, name all the data points I wanted, and I could only name one client per ticket. Also, IT did their work in sprints, which are basically 2-week periods of work. The tickets were always added to the next sprint, so I ended up having to wait 2 to 4 weeks for data. This was fine for the big client report, but now that I was running this report for all renewals, the ticket system was not going to work. Now, if you have worked with sales, you know they don't typically plan out 2 to 4 weeks ahead. At least they didn't at this company. So I reached out to IT and requested direct access to the database. This way, I could stop putting in tickets and just pull or query the data myself. Well, that was immediately denied. All data requests will be filled by only IT. And as a research person, I needed to stay in my lane. You might see where this is going. I wasn't happy and sales wasn't happy with the delay, but there was nothing anyone could do. So I reached out to one of the sales managers to discuss a solution. Since data was going to take 2 to 4 weeks to arrive, could he please send me everyone that has a renewal coming up in the next 2 to 4 weeks? With 5,000 plus customers, that averaged to about 100 renewals a week. He smiled and understood what was going on and happily sent me a list of 400-ish clients. Quick note, the IT team spends the day before a sprint planning the next sprint, and all tickets submitted before the sprint had to be completed during the next sprint. The sprint planning time was always Friday afternoon because the least amount of tickets rolled in. During the planning session, they would plan all the work for the next 2 weeks for the next sprint. Any tickets that came in before 5 p.m. Friday had to be finished over the next 2 weeks. Time for the malicious compliance. Armed with my list of 400 plus clients, I figured out when the next sprint started and cleared my schedule for the day before the IT sprint started, also known as their Sprint Planning Friday. At about 1 ticket a minute, it was going to take about 6 hours and 40 minutes to submit all the tickets, so that's what I spent my whole Friday doing. Let's not forget, they had to get the data for all the tickets during the next sprint as long as I submitted them before 5 p.m. on Friday. That meant they had to take care of all 400 tickets in the next 2 weeks. Plus, I submitted tickets throughout their sprint planning meeting, so they couldn't even plan for it all. If you are not tech savvy, this might not make sense, but if you are, let me add an extra twist to this. They used Jira, an issue tracking app, at the time, and the entire IT team had the Jira app on their laptops. Most of them had push notifications set up, so they got pinged every time a ticket was submitted. I would have paid good money to be a fly on the wall during that meeting, watching a new ticket pop up about every minute. Okay, tech aside, done. I didn't hear a peep from them at all that Friday. To their credit, Monday I started getting data from my tickets. Now I had automated the reporting process on my end, so each report only took me a few minutes to run. I was churning out reports as quickly as I received the data without an issue, and sales was loving it. I saw tickets coming in from every member of the IT team, and during the second week, many tickets came in after working hours, so obviously they were struggling to keep up. Again, I will give them full credit. They fulfilled every single ticket, but there were a lot of long days for them. Everyone was salary, so no overtime pay either. This is, of course, on top of all the other tickets they needed to complete, so it was quite a stressful sprint. Undeterred, I met with the sales manager again right before the next sprint and asked for the next set of clients with renewals. Then, the day before the next sprint, I began submitting tickets again. My workday started at 9 a.m. and by 10 a.m. the head of IT runs over to me. He is bug-eyed and asked me how many tickets I was planning on submitting. I told him the same amount as last time. I only had 200 this time, but he didn't know that. And I'm pretty sure I saw him break on the inside. I did feel bad at this point, so I said, alternatively, you could just give me access to the database and I could query the data myself. I had access before noon. Fantastic, OP. You overwhelmed them with their own process and you got access to the database. So now everybody's happy. Good for you. Awesome malicious compliance. Thanks for sharing, OP. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I certainly did reading them to you. So if you did, then go ahead and give the video a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and become a member of our Discord community that just keeps growing and it is fantastic. And like I said in the beginning of the video, all of the relevant links are in the video description below, so be sure to check them out. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys enjoy this content, so thank you once again. And having said all that, I will see you guys in the next video.